All right, we are live. Welcome, everyone. Today we have a very special show. Black Friday, Cyber Monday is right around the corner. I know for me and Dominique, we've been talking about it for months, probably all year,
Yes.
but certainly since August. Yes. And I'm super excited about today's conversation because I really think we're going to touch on some stuff that gets overlooked. There's so many YouTube videos, so many listicles. Here's all the things you need to do for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And what I notice is there's a lot of copycatting the big guys, the big dogs, studying Amazon and some of these huge household brands. And unfortunately, if we just copy pasta what they are doing for every single business, and we just continue to slash prices like nothing else and go crazy, the recipe and the outcome of that often is really bad net profitability. So today we have Dominique with us. I'm your host, Jordan, if you haven't met me, and we are both from Growth Hit. But today we have Dominique on. He's going to be able to answer. I curated a lot of questions we get from clients and in the comments and from different places, just the most frequently asked things. And Dominique is going to help us really understand how to navigate this high stakes season. He has been the guiding, creative, strategic force behind many brands who have scaled that you do know of. I know he signed some NDAs, so we're not going to get too in the details, but if you have questions or want to talk to us one-on-one or get a consulting session, he is available. So welcome, Dominique. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me again. It's a pleasure to see you. Really excited about today's topic. Black Friday, Cyber Monday, holiday season, Q4, all of the above is always a really scary time for most folks. And I think that some of the questions that you have for me are going to have some surprising and unpopular opinions maybe, but I think they're all founded in the data and the truth of what we're seeing, especially comparing this year to past years. So I'm really excited.
Awesome. Yeah, I do think you might have some answers that are contrarian, which I love because it is not one size that fits all. And there is some really outdated recipes, if you will, that I see people continue to follow. And it really makes no sense for their business model or today's environment where we have tariffs. We have so many things going on. We could have just as easily had a conversation today about the macroeconomic environment and how that's impacting everything. Yeah. So let's just get right into it. I think one of the questions I was really excited to ask you is what is the biggest mistake that you see Shopify and e-commerce brands making around Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and what should they be doing instead?
Yeah, I think it's kind of what we see across all, like, it's not even just Shopify accounts, it's just all businesses. It's just like blanket discounts and just trying to do the deepest discount that you can to try to, I guess the assumption is just get the volume. But I think when you're doing that, you're only competing on price and you're not adding additional value. I think value comes in different ways other than just like the price point. So I think, if the goal is being intentional about price point and making sure that you're getting out like excess inventory, then I could totally understand that. But I think there's ways to be intentional with like intentional bundles. A brand that comes to mind is Birkenstock. I think that they do a good job of balancing like discounts because they have some stuff that's on clearance, but then they have like this member program where you get additional discounts and additional like perks and benefits where you can get access to exclusive styles and all this other kind of stuff. And so I feel like they're adding more value by having the membership program on top of just their discounts because their members get additional percentage off what, like, let's say it's a clearance item. So it's $100. They get an additional on clearance, but they get an additional 10% off. So I think it's just about layering in those other value components and not just always trying to compete on price. Because I think that what they do a good job of by being able to do these kind of like bundles or these kind of additional percent off is they get their AOV higher because you're tempted to spend more. And there's, I'm partial to the Birkenstock brand. And I'm kind of like revealing that in this, but like there's always a couple of styles or a couple of like people that you could buy for, even gifting. Like this makes it more accessible because they're not a cheap shoe. So if you want to buy, for the whole household or for somebody that you really care about, this makes it more accessible where you can buy one for yourself and maybe for them too.
Oh, I love that. I love that you are really emphasizing the value and not just trying to price match anyone and everyone, which ultimately can completely dilute your brand equity, what people expect to spend with you. And at a time where margins are more and more uncertain, that can be difficult.
Yeah, for sure.
And I
Yeah.
love too. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say bundling is kind of, I mean, it's not new, but this is kind of what I'm seeing across a lot of what I think are successful accounts is very intentional bundling. Instead of just being like, throw these two products together and you get 20% off. It's more about creating like use cases or really talking to specific personas that I've noticed a lot more this year. So I think it's a cool trend.
So it's not just random stuff. It's
Yeah.
here's a curated experience or a curated pack.
And
That
it
can
could
help.
be random stuff though, but it's like, how are you positioning this random stuff and giving it a purpose? Because there's always going to be some stuff that you have excess inventory or just stuff left over from seasons past that you're trying to work through. And that's often what's ends up what's discounted first. But I think if you kind of give it like a purpose or a use case, then you're able to reach more people and, you know, they can see themselves with that product or your service or whatever it may be.
I love that. And maybe even that extra inventory. And inventory might come up a few times in this conversation, but using that extra inventory even as a added gift, if you spend X amount, you get a bonus gift. That can be a great way to dip into the reserves you have, if that's a strength you have. I think in general, when we're thinking about Black Friday, Cyber Monday, really evaluate what are your unfair advantages? What are the competitive edges that you personally have? And it's not just about the value that you offer the customer. It could be, do you have more cash so you're able to deploy more in a short amount of time to scale over certain periods of time? Or is your inventory really deep? Or the inverse could be true too. If you have some weaknesses, that might allow you to play the game differently than somebody who has a different stack of weaknesses and strengths in their business model.
Yeah.
This is why really understanding your numbers, your unit economics, your runway, your turnaround time when you order merchandise is so important, because that's going to help you make really good choices instead of just reacting emotionally in the moment and trying to do what you see other people doing.
For sure. Yeah, it's all circumstantial. But definitely, I think the biggest thing that will probably come out of this whole conversation is not to just copy paste, as you said at the top of the stream. Like, just because you see Walmart, Target, and all these big box retailers, or even your favorite like brand that you're following on social media. I work with some brands that are like brick and mortar. It's a brand that's opening soon, but I think the trend that I've seen across that industry, which is play cafes, something new. A lot of the content that they use for marketing is business to business, and it's not speaking to the customer or who you would actually want to have come into the play cafe. So that's something I called out with my client, and was like, I get that this is what's trending, but like, we want to speak to the people that would actually come and spend money versus the people who are building a business. So it's all just realizing, it's like taking a step back and evaluating what the purpose of the advertisement is, and not just advertising just because you think you need to advertise, because that's when it gets super costly, less effective, and this is just not the season to do that.
And is that so? I mean, that leads into my next question, I think, pretty well. Is that unique to this year, or is that always the case? What you just said. You said, that's not effective now. Is it more so in 2025, or just because it's Black Friday and it's expensive?
I think a little bit of both, but more so just because it's Black Friday. It's just more expensive, because I think even as 2025 is a different year altogether. So it's kind of hard to compare it to 2024, 2020. Like, there was just this kind of like bubble that is now bursting across a lot of things. And I think it's kind of rearing its ugly head. And so you have to be more creative and more intentional this year, I would say, than you had in the past. I think you kind of could have just thrown some things at the wall. I think if you are a business that has historical data, this is when you really lean into it and see what's worked in the past and reiterate and kind of just refresh what has worked, and this is not the time to reinvent the wheel. It's the time to double down on what works and just try to find new ways to communicate that instead of trying to test things. It's my perspective, at least.
Interesting. I mean, I don't want to totally turn this into a macroeconomics talk, but you it's hard not to. It's hard to resist.
It really is.
You talked about bubbles bursting. Could you say more about that?
Well, I think you kind of hit it on the head with the mention of tariffs. I mean, if you don't live under a rock, you see the number of jobs. The year started off with cuts to the government. Like it's just our economy as Americans. I won't speak for outside of America, but as Americans, it's just very touch and go, very rocky, very uncertain. And it continues with the government shutdown. There's just so much going on that does not really empower the consumer. And so right now, if you are not really something that is coming up as a need and you're more of a want, then you really need to break through the noise and really communicate your value, especially during Black Friday and Cyber Monday, because everybody's going to be advertising. Everybody's going to have this huge discount. But it's back to the original point. What other value do you offer outside of just the deep discount, or even if it's not a discount? Because I think of brands like Casterly, that it's like, I think their Black Friday offer is save $50 once you spend $1,500. So it's like they know their audience. They know that is not for everybody. So it's like, know your customer, and if it's a numbers game and you're looking after volume, then go as low as you can go without losing money, and hopefully it'll probably end up being a break even sort of situation, and it's not like you're going to be profiting much. But I know a lot of businesses in Q4, specifically around Black Friday and Christmas, they are trying to make up for lost numbers and from earlier in the year, or what they perceive as lost numbers. But I think that this is such a different year that if you had any growth or if it's kind of flat, that is a good thing, all things considered, especially if your cost of goods are kind of are not exceeding the growth that you've had in terms of like the revenue that you're generating, because that is something that a lot of businesses are affected by, the tariffs and just inflation and just everything. So it's like some are passing it on to the consumer. I would say most are. But this is kind of, I don't know, it depends on the space that you're in, because I've seen some industries try to offset that with discounts earlier throughout the year because the prices have risen. So it's like you'll see a 30 to 40% off here randomly. And even if we go back into the summer, look at how many Amazon Prime days there were this year compared to previous years. I thought that was the hugest indicator of where we stand in the economy and how businesses are trying to kind of just push through whatever they can, because it's a struggle, to be honest. It's a struggle.
I'm sure that's both relieving and horrifying to a lot of people who will be watching this. I've seen a lot of companies still be able to comp growth, or 30% growth has been pretty achievable for a lot of people, depending on your stage of maturity, higher percentages. Of course, once you hit that 8-figure mark, sustaining 50% growth just is kind of wild. It's not that it can never happen, but that's a very special brand and business model. So I appreciate you sharing that. For those watching, I don't want you to feel like it's impossible, especially if you have product market fit. If you have something that people love, you're going to be okay. But I think what Dominique is speaking to is it's not as easy for products that don't have that to just throw money at it and see success. Whereas candidly, 5 years ago, maybe more. I mean, we've been at this a while. Yeah. 2019, I feel like you didn't have to try that hard when it came to paid ads to get a return. But these days it really is more challenging. So thank you for speaking to that. And if anyone has any questions about that, let us know. I think that kind of brings me to, you were talking about cutting through the noise a little bit and how you do that. Are there any other tactics or ways that you would suggest people cut through that noise when everybody is screaming 50% off. And like you said, Amazon Prime Day has already happened multiple times. How do people really cut through that? Because we know that people are going to start having a ton of text messages, a ton of emails in their inbox. You start to get the ad fatigue. We just came out of an election cycle in certain areas. I've definitely noticed as a non-premium YouTube user, the ads are so up, like the ad run time is now like 6 minutes on these videos.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to sit through this. Do I start paying for YouTube Premium? But how do you cut through that? Because it is intense right now.
Cutting through is a challenge, and I don't know if everybody is capable or if that is even the right question to ask, honestly. I think that the way that e-commerce is set up now, people are paying attention to the brands in a way, and it's been this way for a while, but like I would say at least 5-10 years, people pay attention to the brands that they're familiar with and that they know and love. And so they're not going to stop that. If they're in tune with you, I think you need to just be able to provide the, just be meeting your customer where they are. So on whatever channel, and engage with them and just offer the discount and make sure that they know, because they're probably already shopping for something. Like they probably already follow you. They already have something in their cart. They have it wish listed. So they're going to be keeping that at top of mind already. I don't think it's about like breaking through other than reminding them that, hey, we know you've shopped with us before, or it's been a while since you shopped with us. We have your favorite item. That wish list item is now on sale. I think a lot of the more savvy marketing, like I will wait list myself for specific things because I'm like, I want this. And so there's already your customer expressing intent and interest in a specific product. So take advantage of that. Start with those customers first and then kind of work your way out of there, because oftentimes you have people already within your kind of realm that you could reach out to increase your sales. You don't have to always be worried about new customers. And I think it's way harder during Black Friday, Cyber Monday to attract net new customers if you're only just talking about the price, because they may not really have any like anchor of that price knowing. I mean, you can have it anchored on the site, like it was this and that, but if they hadn't been watching the price or really in tune to what that offering is, they don't really have a point to refer back to. And so I think if you are going to try to cut through the noise, to finally answer the question, I think the best way is through what I consider like digital word of mouth. So that's going to be influencers. That's going to be the reviews, the recommendations, the old tried and true ways of introducing a product to somebody through somebody else that they already trust, because without that, you're yelling into the void, and a static image, a nice product image, a big high budget video just showing the product off is not as powerful as somebody giving a testimonial or demonstrating how effective your product or service is. It just isn't.
Those are all great points, and they're probably true all year. Something you said, this is the most expensive time to acquire a new customer. And I think we're probably in agreement, but I really kind of zag where a lot of people are zigging, is really just consider, this is the most expensive time to pay to acquire a customer. So if you're relying heavily on paid ads, especially Meta, but also Google, that's going to cut into your margin. And then if you're looking at discounting things heavily, that also cuts in your margin. So you're paying more really for a lower quality customer who may not be the right customer to come back. Really considering your lifetime value of who you're bringing in. And we haven't touched too heavily yet on the algorithm. We can certainly talk about it more. But when you're pulling in people who are purely discount shoppers, that is a different psychographic. It is a different person. It is a different mentality. I mean, it could be the same person in different modes, right? But you're pulling in someone through a psychological angle that is then training the algorithm to go after more people in that behavioral mind state. And when we're talking about the metapixel, it goes back 180 days of people's behavior. So I've seen a lot of brands really hurt themselves by going too crazy. And the brands that are the most susceptible to this, I think, are the smaller ones.
Yeah.
The ones who are not as mature in the market, they aren't as established. They go to discounts too much too soon, and then it's really difficult for them to find a foothold and find that true evergreen type customer that the algorithm continue to find for them, day over day, week after week. And then heading into Q1 is the best time to try to find new customers, honestly. So I know some of this is like, we're talking really big picture, but I think all of this information is so valuable during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, because people seem almost brainwashed to think that we have to make 80% of our revenue in one weekend. Like, that is crazy to me. Now, some business models, something like 1-800-Flowers would be an example where they're going to put up crazy numbers for something like Mother's Day. That makes sense. But most businesses are not going to, they don't have to be so overly indexed on such a short window.
Yes. And if that's your business model, that's kind of terrifying, because unless it's like
but it is
the
a lot
ultimate
of
gift giving, unless it's the ultimate gift, kind of giftable product or something, then it's just kind of, that's scary to think about. But
it is.
I know it exists.
So like, everyone watching, understand what your break-even points are, what your net profit goal is, and adjust throughout the time, adjust throughout the season. And it's okay to dial down if you need to, if you're not hitting those profitability goals for most businesses. Of course, we can't go into every single permutation of inventory levels, et cetera, et cetera. Payroll, some people do not have enough cash to support their payroll without hitting certain volume targets. So obviously those are things we have to consider. But heading into Q1, the cost of impressions is going to go down, and psychologically people have an openness to trying new brands that's typically bigger than other times of year. So all is not lost if you don't hit all of your goals within the next month. A lot of people ask me, Dominique, about algorithmic changes, how that's going to impact them. We touched on a little bit about how 2025 might be different, but I would love to hear more about what you think. Are things totally different? Do we need to think about machine learning and AI in a totally new way? How are you thinking about it? How are you coaching clients through that?
As much as everyone complains about it, I think the machine learning and automation have been useful, specifically in the past year. Across majority, if not all of my clients, I think that we're stressed a lot less because we have been preparing for this moment all year in a way that we hadn't before. And we were trying to like scramble and do creative tests. And I think just the way that we kind of run things with our accounts here, we try to build a portfolio that is sustainable at all times, and things that we can layer in that are either seasonally relevant or, just limited time offers. But typically what we see work well is when you have a strong portfolio of ads going into Black Friday, Cyber Monday, then you don't have to stress as much. And then you can just put those value, whatever the offer is that you already have, on top of that, because a good website will have that communicated. And we have to remember, it's about the website experience too. It's not all about ads. Like, the ads are what attract the attention and get you to go to the website to learn more about the product, the service, whatever it may be. But like, if you are lacking on your website and you're not clearly communicating the discounts and the timelines and all that kind of stuff, that could definitely affect just your conversion rate, the efficiency of the ads, just the whole entire experience. So that's something else to consider as well. But I think, I think the way that we target, the way that we approach it with broader targeting and letting the creative really do the targeting, I see so many people that come and talk to me and talk to us as clients when they're onboarded, and their setup is just so fragmented or so hyper fixated on a specific assumed audience. And it's like, even if they've spent tens of thousands of dollars on market research, you don't know your audience until you've tested on the platform for sure. It's great to have some initial learnings to go in with the hypothesis of this is who we should test and we should target. But the more granular and more hyper-fixated you become on this assumed persona or customer base, the less likely you are to find hidden gems and this time of year specifically, because you may think that person A is only your customer, but person B, C, and D come to find the product. And this is kind of going against what I said about, new products. But if you want to layer it in, use the UGC, the word of mouth approach to kind of introduce that new product. But like it helps. The machine learning is no longer the enemy as much as it used to be. It used to be this big black box of fear. But I think where we stand now, I can't say what's going to happen next year, but for this year, it has been beneficial and has worked well with us instead of working against us. And that's using some of the features, not all of the features, because blindly using all of the features that are available to you, I'm pretty sure people know that's not the best idea.
Yeah, so true. So what I hear you saying is overall, the way that the targeting is automated has been working really well for your portfolio.
Yeah.
And it's less about finding what are the exact inputs to do on the week of Black Friday. And it's more just that constant iteration throughout the year really sets you up to have a scalable foundation when we hit these peak shopping moments.
Yeah. And just being prepared for, these shopping moments, like with whatever that offer is. It's not to say don't do those offers and don't have the stuff organically, because everything you do organically is essentially free. It's just, your payroll and everything, but there's no cost to update your website other than paying your developer or whatever. But like the cost is considerably lower to communicate to your existing audience through email, text message, your social media platforms, and just starting there. And that's also your built-in test audience too.
I love that. I love taking stuff on organic, doing more tests there, see what resonates with people, take the best of the best from that, put it into paid or put it into the email, put it into the text messages, or just cross-apply your learnings in all directions. Yep. But also earlier you said you're not going to really know what's going to work in a paid ads environment on the platform until you try it. And I do think that's true. Sometimes what we see work best on organic does not work really at all to drive purchases. But that doesn't mean it's not worth getting another shot on goal. And you can refer to some earlier conversations. I think most of them were with Jim and some with Dominique, where we talked exactly how we do creative testing and that methodology. So I don't rail and get into that here, but assuming you're using a methodology that doesn't just waste a bunch of money, there's really low downside to taking the best of that organic and seeing what happens.
Yeah. And I think even if it doesn't perform well in terms of conversion, like we've seen some stuff when layered in with some more conversion focused stuff, that it's a good top of funnel kind of creative that will draw the attention, and they're going to see more than one ad before they convert. So maybe that one that launched at first that was not the true conversion optimized ad is a good top of funnel ad that just grabs attention, and then they finally see some other stuff that pushes them across the finish line that is more conversion focused. It's always with what we try to do is build a portfolio that covers all different stages of the buying journey and the discovery journey specifically, since everybody's always looking for new customers. And I think that Meta in particular is a great avenue to acquire those, but it's what is your strategy? How are you going about that? Are you just targeting top of funnel with just these engaging videos that are just introducing the product, but not really informing and explaining and giving examples of how this could really like fit in your life?
Yeah, that makes total sense. So there's a lot of things people could be spending their time on. Every aspect of the funnel is kind of infinite once you start breaking it down, kind of like colors of the rainbow. You can get as detail oriented as you want. What are some tactics that you think are a waste of people's time and just busy work versus what are the levers and the tactics that you really personally prioritize specifically around this time of year?
I think gone are the days overall, and this is a very large blanket statement, but I think the curated particular funnels where it's like, this is the persona, this is the landing page they need to go to, this is the ad they need to see that sends them to that landing page, these are the emails that they need to get. All of that is still true in a sense, but I think you have to be a little more generic and speak to the pain points more clearly instead of just assuming these kind of like, this is person A, so person A sees ad A, and then ad A goes to landing page A. The landing page should be strong enough for everybody. The ads should be enticing. Just, there should be enough ads to entice different groups of people. I think about some of our best performing accounts, one of our best performing accounts. It has a mixture of founder videos, UGC, static images, feature benefit, call outs, and it always alternates. We just kind of mix in some iterations. We test some new, maybe like pain points, like maybe a specific ailment or something, but it all just comes together. And I think that sets a better foundation for what is supposed to happen versus like trying to have these specific creative, specific landing pages, these very special, like this funnel that is just very much an assumption because it doesn't allow you to be as agile as you should be. So if you need to make some changes on that landing page because they're not full, it's not resonating with the demographic that you have in the ad creative or so on and so forth. Like you need to be able to kind of swap out any of the toggles at any given time and not be so dedicated on this has to go there to achieve this specific goal.
I like that. So you're not saying never do customized funnels, but it should be strong enough where almost anyone who lands there would have enough justification to follow through with their purchase or get further into the funnel. And I think some of this is we're just losing the ability to micromanage people. And we're kind of in this interesting gap because you're seeing more and more of these features where Meta and Google and TikTok and all these platforms customize where they send people. A classic example is the dynamic product ads. Those are not new. Those have been around a long time. And they specifically curate, okay, I'm going to show Jordan this specific shoe in leopard print and this size, and she clicks it and she goes to that page. So that's where more and more things are going, even outside of the dynamic product ad. We're not quite there, I think, in terms of the automation. And when you see the LLMs as well, like when you're typing into ChatGPT, Grok, Claude, whatever your tool, Gemini, whatever your tool of choice is, it is a micro level of personalization that as marketers, we can't really create infinite funnels for these people, but that's where it's going, right? It's about setting up the environment, having these different options for the machine learning. Now, today, we still are, for the most part, putting a singular landing page associated with a specific ad, but they're going to get multiple ads. And we're not always able to track people throughout the funnel across their devices. There's tools that can make it easier, but it's not perfect. And it's certainly less robust than it used to be, maybe for a good reason. And depending on your region, if you're in Europe, oh, wow, it's a lot different. But I love that. Like, stop trying to micromanage the environment. Stop assuming who your customer is and how they speak. And really, the job as the marketer for this Black Friday, Cyber Monday is to set it up with the right options. As far as creative, do you see like the Black Friday, Cyber Monday ads? What creative do you actually see succeed the most during this period?
That's kind of a trick question. I think
is it?
A little bit. I think back to my original answer, where I was just saying that if you have already set the foundation, that's going to be what performs well. But obviously, if you don't have a strong foundation and you go to launch something and it has a good offer, it's probably going to do well. It's probably not going to be sustainable long term. There's probably going to be a larger drop off after that big peak. And the opposite end of the spectrum, if you have a nice solid foundation and you're able to scale up and layer in things you will have your top performers that will continue to perform well oftentimes. And then your new offer-based creatives that come in, and they mix in. And like we just said, they'll see more than one ad. And it also goes to the website. Are you communicating that offer on the website? Because your old ads could be just really good and not even have to communicate that offer. And so when they land on that landing page and they see that offer, it's like icing on the cake. It's a bonus deal that they didn't even expect. So they're more than likely going to convert even higher than they would have originally. So I just think that it's having a diverse portfolio is that creative that wins during Black Friday. It's not just the offer only ads. Sure, they're probably going to help. I'm not saying not to do them, but if you're only going to do offer only ads and you don't have stuff that's already been running, or if you're like starting your business and you're just starting to advertise during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, don't do that. Unless I just wouldn't. I wouldn't. It's just so expensive. And it's not the time to really learn about people's buying behavior because they're expecting a discount. And unless you have the discount that you can maintain, like if you were to be starting right now, you're going to be getting nothing but discount shoppers. And how are you going to maintain Q1 through Q3? Because you're not going to have the same prices likely, because you are discounting to get that volume. So it's just going to be inflated. It's going to be skewed and not in your favor. So I think, it's really just having a good diverse portfolio is what it makes the good Black Friday creative. It's not just the big bold 50% off with the red text and all of the stuff. It's still doing what you've done all year. And then maybe if you want to, you can iterate on it and just update that top performing ad and put in an overlay like 30% off or update the copy. I think that's a lot more impactful than, unless you're like a beauty brand where you have to do the dedicated seasonal shoot. That doesn't make sense to me. And with AI now, and between Neo and Midjourney and so many of these tools, you could mock up or generate a seasonally relevant shoot to show that product in a more seasonal light.
This is so funny because, like, as a entrepreneur that's dopamine hungry, everything you're saying is like so annoying. Like, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's
no,
like,
I know what you mean.
It's like, okay, focus on what always works. Focus on the fundamentals, and just keep executing. There's not some secret sauce that makes Black Friday, Cyber Monday make or break it. It's really, how well did you perform the whole year? And that's going to determine what runway you have to scale up, or do you scale down based off of your unit economics. I'd love to get into how do you navigate modifying budgets and how do you coach people through targets during this time? Because of course we want to maximize the amount of volume within a healthy profit margin that the business owner wants. Like, how do you deal with that? And especially when things are fluctuating so much day to day potentially during this time of year.
For me specifically this year, was having conversations early on, and just setting expectations, and also just looking at year over year comparisons and seeing what it was like. And if, kind of back to the question we just answered, if you had, substantial growth and it was pretty, not necessarily linear, but it was pretty healthy and you saw growth throughout the rest of the year, then you're more than likely going to be set up for success more so than just trying to scramble and make it all happen at the end of the year. So I think it's just it all really boils down to being prepared. And I know there's no magic wand. There's no secret sauce. It's just really making sure that sustainable growth is what you should be aspiring for. Like, I think people are always looking at ways of growth hacking. And there's a difference between growing your business and trying to hack growth, because growth hacks are not sustainable. That's why they're called hacks. Like, doing things with a regimen and a process and staying true to kind of like the boundaries you've set is how things typically get better. Incremental growth is better than unsustainable hacked growth that sees you up 100% one month and then down 150 the next, because what you did was just you caught the lowest hanging fruit and then now they're all gone. So what can you do next to try to maintain? And that just, I don't know.
Yeah, those are great points, and they're equally true during Q4. And I love how you differentiate between a bigger growth strategy and growth hacks. Now, if you have to make payroll next week, totally get it. There's a laundry list of tactics we can do to pull up that revenue, but be prepared for it to fall off a cliff. And that is it's so relevant to discounts because people get fatigued by the discount where they move up purchases that they might have made before. We used to work with, I think you worked on it too. We used to work on a brand years ago, and they realized all of their customers would wait every year to purchase on Black Friday. And then the following quarter sucked. It's always horrible. So, it just shows you can be hurting your bottom line if you're just super fixated on keeping up with the Joneses, keeping up with the other Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Build in Public posts who are reporting massive numbers. You don't know what the net of all of that is or the consequences for the business overall. So I love that you point that out. Like, growth hacks can work, but you have to be prepared for the consequences of them. Some type of sale fatigue is going to be unavoidable right this time of year, even if you're not running a sale. It's just what's happens. People spend a lot of money. Yes. They're out of money. When do you really expect to start seeing a decline in purchase behavior?
I don't know. I feel like there is an overall decline because people don't have access to some of the things that they used to even earlier on in the year or even year over year, whether that's an actual job or assistance or just the desire to spend as much as they have in the past, because now I think people are tightening their wallets because the future is not as certain with tariffs and inflation. So it's like people are being more thoughtful about how they're spending their money, where they're spending their money. I mean, there's a number of boycotts that have been going on since the beginning of the year. So I think the biggest thing for me is the consumer education is much more apparent than it had ever been. And it's harder to get away with some of the simple kind of tricks of marketing that used to work. I think drop shipping has affected that. The TikTok shop has affected that. Amazon itself, just everything being widely available on Amazon. Also Walmart getting into that territory of being like a new Amazon where everybody's they're selling the same product across the same retailers. And you may or may not find different prices. So it's just overwhelming. I think consumers are just in general fatigued as is. And then when it comes to buying stuff, whether it's for a gift or for themselves, they know what they want now and they will go after what they want, or they'll do the research versus just being as easily introduced to something and being ready and willing to just buy it. I think it's just an overall thing. I don't think it's just this season or that there's a date where it'll cut off. So it's really just making sure that you're clear about what you have to offer and your customer will be there. I don't think that there's a way that you can kind of coax them the way that you were able to unless it's like a gimmick type of thing where it's like these 3D AI generated ads on like TikTok and stuff. And then it's like with that, it has to be the right price point to kind of be like an impulse buy. But if you have something that is of quality, it may take longer to get your customer than it would have back in the day.
I think all that's true. Something I pay attention to, and I'm a bit of a broken record with people right now on this, is I always pay attention to car repossession rates.
Yes.
It's just such a great indicator for where the average American is, because many people have a car payment, and when people people need their cars.
Yeah, much more people have a car payment than do own a house. And so I think, and the car is your second biggest purchase in your life outside of a home. And most people probably won't own homes right now. So all things considered, or don't or won't own homes. So I think I look at, and as well as the housing market, I always look at car repossessions too, because it really is, I think, one of the biggest indicators of what the average American is really going through, like you said, because if they can't afford to pay for their car, then they probably aren't working because they need a car to go to work, or they are underemployed, and just it's just a true indicator that things are not super positive, and it has been increasingly getting worse this year. So
yeah, you're starting to see more people default on student loans as well. So, all of these things I do think are relevant to Black Friday, Cyber Monday, but to kind of make that link story stronger for people, you can't really get away. I'm really just reiterating what Dominique already said. You can't get away with the same hacks as you might have 5 years ago, even, and even during COVID, because there was a lot of other factors that went into that
especially during
period.
COVID.
Where e-commerce actually did incredibly well. There was just more free cash available that typically was spent on other things like vacations that was getting dumped into online products.
Then that attention span, then everybody was just looking for something to entertain or be different, or just they were looking for something. Now people are looking for specific things, kind of like what I was saying, like, what you need, if you need a mattress, if you need a specific thing for your house or for yourself, and what your budget is for clothes, and like, people are not as just excited about spending money the way that they were during COVID, because there's less certainty, and they don't have the access to the funds that they had previously.
Yeah. It's
even if you are making more money now, technically you're paying more for the things that you were paying less for a year ago, even.
That's true. Prices are up even if inflation isn't. And I think that's something that can be really confusing too, as people are trying to navigate this as a business owner. But it's certainly impacting consumer behavior from what I can see. When we talk about the typical Black Friday, Cyber Monday cycle, I will say I do think things are probably going to slow down around December 15th or so, just based off of prior cycles. You start hitting shipping cutoffs. So really making sure that you're educating people on what your shipping times are will go a long way, because if people can't figure it out quickly, they're just not going to buy from you once we hit December, really, and maybe even sooner.
I would say,
and then I've also worked with really, it would be best if it's on your product page, even just expectation setting, so that they can feel confident and comfortable purchasing it. And then I've seen a lot of people try to make that week of Christmas work and do different promotions and things like that. And I would say my advice for anyone listening is don't worry about it. Dial down, take a break, and reconvene when people have another paycheck. And as we enter Q4, because yes, the cost of impressions is going to come down. And of course, there's always exceptions. There's some businesses that have seasonality that's going to buck the trend. We're not talking about that. But be prepared to dial down. Again, just follow your net profitability. If you're still profitable, keep it going. It doesn't really matter. But you will probably start to see those ROAS decline, those CPAs climb, and the conversion rates drop. So just monitor it day by day and make those cuts where necessary. And my favorite motto that our team has is don't be greedy, be profitable. Because when you start to be greedy is when you start to make mistakes. And the last thing you want to do during Q4 is wreck whatever profitability you made in that year. And it's easy to do.
Extremely easy to do, especially because if you're trying to chase those discounts and deep discount and chase that volume, and just to reiterate what you just said about the expectation setting for shipping, that is the conversation that I've been having with every client right now, because just think about yourself as you're shopping for people. I know as I'm shopping right now, the only thing that matters is not the only thing, but the first thing that matters is how soon will it arrive? Because if I'm buying gifts, I don't want it to arrive after the season. And with tariffs and just stock and inventory and stuff, there have been some delays. And I don't know. You just want to make sure that you are setting good expectations and clearly communicating your offers across your entire website, your organic presences, email, everywhere where you're not paying to show up. Make sure that it's ever apparent and use that. And don't be afraid to increase the touch points for like email and stuff, because, kind of to one of the questions you asked earlier, like how do you break through? You kind of have to up the ante and increase the effort in terms of like the number of kind of correspondence that you have with your customers, but also don't make it so overkill to the point where it's like there's nothing different between these. You're just sending the same email over and over. So it's like make sure you have something to communicate. If you can't, less is more always still. But if you have a lot, like if you've introduced new products recently, if you have specific categories on a higher sale than others, or also to one of, I took some notes earlier, I think don't be afraid to treat your special customers specially. Whether that's they haven't bought in a year or they buy all the time, offer them specific discounts, additional discounts if you can, on top of kind of going back to the Birkenstock kind of method, what is already in existence, so that they feel even more special and push them over the line. So that's another way that you can use what's already in your repertoire, in your pocket.
Yeah, Boll and Branch is a really good example of this, I think. So they have a store in Dallas that I've been to in person when I lived there. And so I'm on their like store specific list where I get emails from the manager of that store. And of course they're sent to many people, like it's not that personalized, but there's still kind of this personal connection that they're not afraid to double up. So they have that going on, and they have the corporate stuff, the stuff that anybody who's ever bought anything online or wherever that they're getting. I think their text game is really strong. I think in some ways it might be a little overboard. However, this is the time of year to not hold back, because Dominique earlier touched on this. Consumers are not right now just like have tons of extra disposable cash just looking for anything to buy. Most of them have already started to establish a connection on some level with a brand, and our best bet really is to remind them as much as possible through those owned channels. And I'm just going to steal this from Alex Ramosi. He talks about how people go into cycles of dormant as a buyer and then hyperactive as a buyer. So you could think of life events, right? When you're getting married, there's a laundry list of things you're going to buy. When you have a child, when you go on vacation, the holidays is exactly that. That's exactly what it is. It is a life event where you go into a peak hyper shopping mode. And when that is occurring, you want to get in front of people as much as possible and keep giving them other offers for other things that might make their life easier or help them satisfy another person on their list or another thing. What Boll and Branch does well, I think, is you mentioned this, they always are bringing in variety. They're bringing in something slightly different. So they'll have a bundle with one color blanket one week, and then another week they'll have a different curated bundle, and they'll stack the discounts on that depending on the day. Something else I like that they do is they do a free gift with purchase at a pretty high AOV. So that makes sure that, and they do very limited time. So it'll be like a 24-hour limited inventory. Hey, we have X amount. And as soon as it sells out, the free gift is no longer available. That really, you see kind of these layered strategies. You have these evergreen strategies, and you have these hyper small moments that are very short flash sales, but they're not using ads for it, right? I wouldn't use ads for a flash sale, but organic and that text message with that really easy, convenient link to a well-created, mobile-friendly website that's easy to check out on. I think they're doing an excellent job at kind of hitting all those levels, making people feel special, always having newness, even though it's not a different product. Like, how many ways can you sell blankets and towels and sheets? Like it's not TiVo. Not that I've ever bought anything from a TiVo ad. But yeah, like don't be afraid to bother people, because you're probably going to lose. And it's if you don't, like, someone else is going to do it. Someone else is going to get that purchase. And you've invested all year in acquiring people for this list, acquiring people. Some people are going to unsubscribe no matter what you do. So of course, kind of monitor and see what that level is. But, don't be afraid to be a squeaky wheel, because people are looking for quality. They're looking for things that they trust. They're looking for things that they know a little bit about. But they might forget about you.
Yes.
Well, we have a few minutes left. I feel like we covered a ton of ground. We talked about creative strategy. We talked about the algorithm and changes over the years. We've talked about, what are kind of the myths that people still have about Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and really, I think some of the entrepreneurial psychological blockers that people have. We didn't touch too much on the website tactically. So I would like to ask Dominique, what are like 1 to 3 things that every website you look at that you would prioritize during Black Friday, Cyber Monday? What are like a few just places in the funnel that you would recommend that people go in, maybe install some heat maps today, if you don't already have a tool like Clarity or Hotjar, and start to take a look at?
Yeah, just of course making sure that your analytics are set up first before you start doing anything is always imperative. Outside of that, I think just the best practices. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. The site-wide banner always works. The homepage hero banner works. If I think of like Wayfair, they just had like a 72-hour Wayfair event where it's like on specific images, they had just like a text overlay where it's like, this is 72% off on the first thumbnail. So it's like something that's easily programmable, probably across a lot of the different SKUs, but it's easy to understand for the customer too. So it's like wherever they're going to naturally land, express that offer there, like on the PDP, on the homepage, on the collections. There shouldn't be any page on your website that is not offering the value that you have for the holiday season. Even your terms of service and your privacy policy, it should be in that banner, that site-wide banner, and the header or something. I think it's really super simple. I think the easiest way is to just implement something site-wide, either in the header or the footer, and just communicate that. And if there are multiple deals, make it scrollable, make it, whatever easy way that they can access that information. And if you really want the sales, auto apply the discounts, but show them that they are getting the auto applied discount, show them the original price, and show them that the sale code has been applied so that they can see it, because that's going to psychologically help them that you don't want them to do the mental math. You want them to see the math, and you want them to be appreciative of that discount that you're giving them so that they'll actually convert, versus just being like, it went from $80 to $50, but we're only going to show you $50 because we think the $50 will move you across the finish line, even though you don't have that reference point of it was previously 80. So.
Oh, that is such a good point. And that's like age-old
discount I'm like,
wisdom.
It's marketing 101.
If you just have it as $50 and in the cart, they can't tell that it used to be higher, they will either abandon. Some people will even email you and say, oh, the discount didn't apply.
I have a real life example of Costco. I was looking at a mattress, and it's like, you go on, because I was looking on the website, it says $200 off. And so it shows you the final price before you add to cart. And then when you add to cart on the website, it's fine. But when I go to open the app, it still has the full price until I go to the actual cart page, like in a whole different dialogue. And it was so confusing. And I was like, wow, maybe I just have to go to the website to get the price. But I had to scroll all the way down to see them doing the math at the bottom of the cart, which is it wasn't even near the checkout button. So I'm like, oh man, this is confusing. And I didn't buy it because I'm like, oh, I don't want to pay $200 more just because I'm now using the app and didn't remember my login for the website. So make it clear everywhere on the PDP, in the cart, on checkout, what the value is of the original price and the discount, because you don't want to leave anything to chance or to cause any confusion, because it just will not help your conversion rate.
I think this is another reason why for many businesses, I prefer a longer sale window, because you have less of a risk of messing something up major like this and only have a tiny window of time to address it, because not everybody does a great job, unfortunately, of testing these things before they go live, depending on your level of sophistication and what Shopify plan you are on. A lot of these things are implemented sometimes through an app, and apps do break. The third-party apps do have issues sometimes, and doing things manually, depending on your SKU count, may not be possible. But I love all these suggestions. I really love the one of including the discount in the primary product photo, because that's where most people's eyes go.
Yep.
However, if you're unable to properly do some of this stuff, you can also put it in the text, in the description, in bold, or like Dominique said, the site-wide banner, of course, is going to be the easiest thing, but you might be limited on how much you can communicate that way.
Yeah.
But if it's not obvious, and if people have to use their brain, they will not buy it.
Yeah. No matter how much they may want it. Yeah.
Yeah, that goes for the confusing sales too. Some of those are totally counterproductive. If you are, like, I understand from a margin perspective why one would do it, but these tiered sales where spend X amount, get this, spend X amount, get that. If it's a gift, that's easier cognitively. But if you're doing different percentages, then people are going to sit there and try to figure out, well, which tier, how much should I spend to get the best deal? I don't want to spend too much and spend, like,
miss out on the deal.
Do not make people think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think this has been an awesome hour. I had some surprise things you brought up here from the macroeconomic environment, and I don't want to scare people, but I do think it's a reality that has not been. Last year was also weird. Like, the last few years have been weird, and we've seen a lot of companies in these like larger scale reports. I think Adobe puts one out. I might be mixing that up. I think Adobe's consumer one is the one I'm thinking of. And we've seen some softer growth year over year in Q4 the past few years. Most of these analysis too do not take inflation into consideration. So once you do that, it's like, oh, if we were to index all of this growth into like gold or Bitcoin or something like that, we wouldn't actually be seeing growth.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to like overstate this year in that way, because it's kind of been weird for a while. However, it's important to keep that in mind. I think my number one takeaway from this time together is know your business, know your profit margin, follow it, and don't get sidetracked about what other people are doing. You don't know if they're losing money. A lot of these companies are private, and you do not know what the dollars in the bank look like. So it's easy to get caught up, I think, in wanting to win it all.
Neighbor.
Yeah, but you do not know. Same goes true, like in just personal stuff. Like, you don't know how much debt other people have, or like how they're navigating things. Know your numbers, be flexible, scale up if you see the opportunity, scale down when you're not hitting that net profitability, focus on the fundamentals, use the machine learning. It does work really well. Don't try to micromanage it. Also, if you are launching stuff for the first time, now is probably not the time to DIY if you haven't done it before. I think it's worth getting an expert to consult with, so you don't make major mistakes during the most expensive time of year. Dominique, you shared so much valuable stuff, but what's maybe like the one thing you want every Shopify store owner to have in their minds as they go through the next few weeks?
Just making sure, I think you hit it on the head at the end, just making sure you know your business and you know your numbers. Don't get distracted by seeing, it could be easy to see a LinkedIn post of somebody seeing record numbers. Just because you're not seeing record growth doesn't mean that your business can't continue to grow. If you are seeing growth at all, back to one of the original points I made, in this economy and this year in particular, honor that. And then think about how you can sustain that and maintain that going into next year. Don't lose it all trying to squeeze out the last final month or so, because it, like you mentioned, Jordan, it's so easy to try to easily squander that by going to launch or being on a platform and increasing the spend and really not seeing that actual performance really match up with how you are increasing that spend. So it's better to spend fewer dollars and get fewer sales than to spend more dollars and get fewer sales that cost you even more to acquire.
Yeah, for most people. I mean, if you're playing the 10-year horizon, trying to raise money and trying to prove certain metrics, totally understand that. But I think what Dominique we're covering is really trying to make sure that we're growing in a way that doesn't put us in a hole, because what sucks the most is getting super work, like all the anxiety, working so hard, staying up late, doing all these things only to be losing money. And we don't want that for you. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dominique, for joining. And thank you for all of our viewers. I see some people are still live with us. Really appreciate you joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Our website is growthhit.com. You can find us streaming on Jim Huffman's LinkedIn, Twitter, all the places. And if you want a consulting session with Dominique or I or both of us, we'd be very happy to share our mistakes, our wins, and really condense that learning curve for anybody. And wishing you all a happy holiday season. Best of luck during your Q4. You're going to rock it. And with that, we'll close. Thanks so much, Dominique.
Thank you. Have a good one, everyone.